Welcome to the Career Conversations podcast. This is a YSU podcast about career choices and the unexpected changes that we make along the way. My name is Dr. Justin Edwards with the Office of Career Exploration and Development, and today you're tuning in to listen to a panel of alumni, all coming from the College of Liberal Arts, Social Sciences, and Education. We've got 3 alumni with us today, and we're going to start the panel by having each of them introduce themselves, share a little bit about their degree and how they're using it in their current role. Our first panelist is Jordan Pennell. Jordan, thank you for being here today.
You bet. Hey, Justin, thanks. Appreciate the opportunity. Jordan Pennell. I am a political science and economics major during my time at YSU. I graduated in 2014. I currently serve as the Northeast Ohio Regional Director for Senator Sherrod Brown.
All right, thank you for being here today. We're going to throw the mic over to Jane Catless.
Thanks. My name's Jane Catless. I graduated in 2016 with a double major in geography and Spanish, minor in linguistics, and currently I work as a contact tracer on behalf of the Ohio Department of Health through a company called Public Consulting Group.
Thank you for being here. And it was geography and Spanish?
Geography and Spanish.
Well, we're going to talk more about that.
Okay.
All right, I'm looking forward to that. And then last but not least, Brittany Mendez. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
So my name is Brittany Mendez. I was a general studies major during my time here at YSU. I graduated in 2015 after several career changes. I'm currently the Director of Knowledge Transfer Services at HD Davis CPAs.
Okay. And the General Studies program, one of the things that sometimes people don't know is that within that General Studies program, you end up having focus areas, right? Brittany,
Yes.
what were some of those focus areas for you in that General Studies program?
Yeah, so I was a little bit all over the board. When I started at YSU, I really, didn't know what I wanted to do at that point, and I sometimes still don't, but I think that's pretty common. Mm-hmm. So my focus areas ended up being sociology and psychology, and then I had a minor in nonprofit leadership through the College of Business.
Sociology, psychology, minor, and nonprofit. I love that. I was actually a general studies major myself, and I started pre-med, ended up moving into general studies, and eventually I finished my general studies degree with an emphasis in communication and chemistry.
Very cool.
And then did my master's in counseling. And I like to joke that I just wanted to gather all of the degrees that start with the letter C at YSU.
Yeah. My philosophy was I wanted to help people, I just didn't want to touch them. So
I love that. Well, let's before we even start to talk more about the nuts and bolts of how you came about picking the majors, I just want to talk about campus a little bit. Campus has changed a lot. I've been on campus for about 15 years, from doing my undergrad, master's, and being a staff member. Talk a little bit, if we can, about how campus has changed from the time that you started to you graduate, and then even now after being in the workforce and coming back to see campus. How have you seen campus evolve? Whoever wants to take it can dive in.
I guess I can start. For me, I was a commuter student, so maybe my experience was a little bit different than the others here. But I came from a small town. I grew up in Lordstown, Ohio, and coming to YSU, there was a meme, I think, at the time. I don't know if you guys have seen it. It was like a scene from Lion King, and it was like, that dark area, that's downtown. You don't go there.
Okay.
So it was not like the most comfy, friendly place that you see today. Mm-hmm. And maybe there was a little bit of fear to that, but maybe we'll talk about it later. When I started to work downtown, I had a little bit of different perspective on, Youngstown and the community as a whole. But
so it's changed a lot. It's less like the scary Simba,
the Lion King. Yeah,
meme.
It's much less like that.
Okay, it's more like we're holding up Simba and singing the song.
Yeah.
I love that. How has it changed for you, Jane?
A lot of similar experiences. I mean, I grew up between Boardman and Poland, and I came to YSU. I was actually on scholarship, so I had the opportunity to live on campus.
Okay.
So I remember as a kid thinking, or rather, I remember as an adult when I came to campus realizing that there were places I had been in Youngstown that I hadn't been to in like a very long time. Like my mom works up in Liberty, and there was a time that I think we used to drive through Youngstown, and then there was a time that we would just take 7-Eleven. So when I started being a student at YSU, like I remember, a lot of people would tell me, people thought I was crazy. I would walk down to the post office in downtown. They'd be like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" I'm like, it's sunny outside. It's okay, guys. No one's gonna hurt you. And over that time, like I remember seeing like, I started in 2012, and I remember seeing at that time like they were being better about putting more lights on campus, more security poles. There has been more investment that we've seen in downtown. So like the investment in campus is obvious. Like there's been new housing that's been built. It's crazy. Like somebody at the store that I was talking to like 2 weeks ago saw that I was wearing something with YSU, and she's like, "I'm going to YSU tomorrow. Do you know where I park?" And I was like, probably not, because a lot has changed since I was there. Like, it's been 6 years since I graduated. But I actually had the parking services phone number still in my phone. I was like, you can call them and ask. So yeah, no, it's almost completely different, but it's a lot of good things to see.
Once a penguin, always a penguin. You got the resources in your phone, so you got everything that you need. I feel every single podcast that we've recorded this week, because we've been doing a bunch of these each week based on the colleges, I end up inevitably talking about like lights on campus. So you brought it up for me, which I love, right? I think one of the best things that has happened to campus is burying the electrical wires on Wick Avenue, right? And those nice lights up Wick Avenue, like it feels like a college town. And all the work on Fifth now, it really does feel like there's so much cohesion on campus, and it feels like you're part of this, college community, which is really exciting. Jordan, I'll give you a chance to share as well. What else has changed? What have you seen evolve when you first remember YSU?
Yeah, so I first stepped foot as a student in the fall of 2009, and it's light and day how much different has changed. And I'm really quite, to be honest, jealous of the students today, because their experience is far different from mine. Like Brittany, I was a commuter student, so early on in my tenure, I came in, did my classes. I had a part-time job that I would go to after class, so I didn't spend too much time. But as throughout my tenure, I started to establish my own hangouts. Arby's was a popular place. I used to joke with people that I would have the one floor of Mog Library named after me, because I spent so much time in between classes hanging out in Mog. And one of my favorite memories was there was a place called Pete's Place where Chick-fil-A is, and of course, being a college student, it was a buffet, and we would try to eat as much as we could in between classes. So I think it was like maybe $8. So we tried to see how much food we could eat with that $8 price tag. So a lot different. Super jealous of the students and their new experience here at YSU. It's certainly more inviting, and I hope to see more kids transition from being commuter students to actually having a presence on campus, because I think that makes a big difference.
Well, I think that's a good transition. I want to talk about an article that recently got published in the Chronicle of Higher Education. The article is called New Pathways from College to Career. And one of the findings, they looked at the difference between what first-year students plan to do and then what seniors say they've actually done in terms of getting ready for their career. And one of the most significant buckets that students engage with is what they called social capital building. These are things like networking with alumni and professionals, doing job shadowing, talking with their faculty members about their future career. So it's building that social network, that capital around you. I'd love to talk a little bit about how you feel as though as a student at YSU, you did just that. What mentors did you engage with? What faculty were impactful on your pathway to choosing your major and then finding success after you graduated? Anyone would like to jump in with their ideas on that?
Sure, I'll start.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that is such an incredibly huge piece to the puzzle as you're navigating career opportunities and exploring what makes sense for you. Early on, as a student, I think I was a little more intimidated with that process. Mm-hmm. I just came to class and, did my work and went home. I really never thought about the value in building relationships with my professors. The first 2 years of my experience, that was me. I came to class and I went home. As things progressed during my tenure, I understood the value of showing up at office hours to my professors to build that relationship, because they had leads on potential internship opportunities and why those are so important, and how to build relationships outside of the university with potential employers through internships. So I would say that, again, I was pretty intimidated with building that social network. It's awkward to put yourself out there, introduce yourself, and talk about what you're interested in and what sort of value you can bring to the table in terms of internships and other job opportunities. But it's so important to build that relationship, build that network out, because you never know what sort of opportunities may unfold, a year from now, 2 years from now. I would certainly urge, new students to suck it up and put yourself out there and maybe throw yourself in an awkward situation. But things do improve as you build those relationships out.
I'd like to just briefly mention too, you use the phrase office hours, right? And sometimes a first year student might be listening to this and they might have the idea of office hours might be a very new idea to that first year student. And sometimes there's a perception that, you go to office hours when you got a bad grade on a test or you don't understand something. And I think it's important to remember that office hours, when used well, I think can be preemptive. Right, it's like I feel like I understand things, but I'd like to connect. I'd like to make sure that I'm kind of refining my knowledge, and it doesn't have to just be a place to go when something bad happened. Those office hours are a great way to start this process of building that social network on campus.
Yeah, if I could, throw an idea out there as well. Sure. Again, towards the middle of my college experience, I was applying for fellowships, and I wasn't taking full advantage of office hours. And part of my applications was I need letters of recommendation from my professors. Well, I didn't have a relationship with them. How are they supposed to pen a meaningful letter of recommendation if they don't know who I am? Mm-hmm. So that was pretty much the turning point of, hey, I need to show up to these office hours, even though I'm a decent student, but to build a relationship and flesh out ideas and talk about different projects that we're working on in class.
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually have something interesting to add to that.
Yeah, please do.
Thanks, Jordan. He said he was a decent student, and when I was in, I think my first 2 years, I had A's, B's, and I was, bouncing between majors. I think I had maybe 5 in total in my time here, and I feel like, as my grades started to slip, I lost the desire to connect with the professors that I had, who could have helped me. And I think that had I maybe come to terms with where I was with my mental health at that point, I would have been more open to have those conversations, but it felt more like punishment, like you mentioned earlier. Like, I'm having a problem, so I need to go to their office and we need to talk about it. But on the flip side of that, I was also more career focused, so I felt like I just wanted to work. I didn't want to be sitting in a classroom. I wanted to work, and I think, when I found my first internship at it was unpaid, found it on Craigslist at a startup in downtown Youngstown. My parents were really angry. Remember the meme we talked about? You don't go downtown.
I haven't heard the word Craigslist in a while either.
Yeah. So I found that internship, and that's, I think, where I found the value of networking. I worked with Barb Ewing, Jim Kostler, a lot of names that, are really important in the revitalization of downtown, and getting to interact with them and network with them, I actually found myself better able to connect back to YSU during my last 2 years. So I think that was a critical point for me.
So it sounds like that hands-on application, the internship, like actually going and doing some work, helps to reinvigorate your motivation to be successful.
1,000%.
Okay.
Well said.
That's so important too.
Since we're talking about like the value of networking, I would probably just want to add that every cool thing I've gotten to do since I started college through my first couple jobs that I've had has been because I had a connection with a professor. Okay. I think I walked into my first advising appointment in class with a Post-it note that had 16 majors on it because I just wasn't sure. And, you know, towards the end of my career, after switching a couple times, I found that, you know, I kept taking classes in things that I loved. And so it was suggested to me that I could just major. I mean, very easily I was able to get the courses that I needed for a double major in Spanish and geography in 3 more semesters, and that's what I had left. So that's what I did. When I was an undergrad, I went to Canada with a geography professor because one of my professors like picked me out in class and was like, "You're undecided. You want to go to the Canadian Rockies?" And I was like, "Like that's ever going to happen." The professor from the geography department reached out to me and was like, "I heard you're interested in being my research assistant." I had an internship with the Rocky Ridge Neighborhood Association on the west side of Youngstown and Youngstown Neighborhood Development Corporation when I was in college. And that was because I was communicating with professors who then introduced me to the president of the neighborhood association. From there, he reconnected me with some of the people I had volunteered with at YNDC, Jack Dougherty, Ian Beniston, and they had me working in their office to work on projects specifically focused on that neighborhood. So everything I've done was because I cultivated communication with my professors.
Absolutely. And you know, you're talking about a lot of diverse experiences too, right? Getting to experience internships in different types of organizations and with different types of goals. One of the most important concepts that I think is easy to forget, because everyone, when we come to college, we want to kind of find that pathway and get hyper motivated and just laser focused. But the importance of the transferability of skills that we develop in different areas. I'd like to spend some time thinking and reflecting about that. You know, what are some skills that you see yourself using in your current role right now that maybe you developed in places that you didn't expect to develop them in? Give you a couple seconds to think about that one, because that's a deep one. There's a lot to pull from there. Yeah. Jordan, go ahead.
Yeah, so, you know, I still to this day, I have sort of anxiety about public speaking, and it's something I do so much with my job. And of course there are communication courses that everyone has to take, which I did take, and I struggled through it. But I think I really developed my communication skills, you know, not at my time at YSU, but as a student at YSU. I was a bartender at a local establishment here in the area, and it kind of forces you to talk to people and to triage their emotions and how do you respond. And after working there for 2 or 3 years before I graduated and started my career, I developed skills that was a game changer for me, and I felt more comfortable talking to people and how to respond appropriately based on their social cues, whether it's their emotions or how they're standing or sitting, because so much of what I've done in my career, relies on those skills and how to triage and communicate effectively. Is that what you're looking for?
Absolutely. Bartending, or even, I waited tables all throughout undergrad and even into the first year of my master's program, and the ability to, again, meet people and understand how to communicate. I feel like I learned just as much there as I did in a lot of those classes. And I always joke, the best day of my life was the day I stopped waiting tables. Right? It was hard work, and I think everyone should wait tables or work bartend or do something like that to engage with people. My wife always says that I should say the happiest day of my life was when we got married, but it's right up there with the day that I stopped waiting tables.
Sure, if you didn't give someone a good experience, you didn't make money that day.
Yeah, exactly. And given those experiences and building that ability to work with people is so important. Other ideas about transferability of skills, things you see yourself using now that you developed in spaces you didn't expect?
Yeah, so for me, I forget how old I was at that point, but I'll just say I was young. I was a junior in college, and I was given some quite large responsibilities at my first internship that was actually more of a full-time job, but it was pitched to the board as an internship so that they could get me. But, I was thrusted into this environment where I'm with C-levels and I'm with investors who have, a great wealth of experience and a great wealth in financial terms as well.
Yeah.
And I was put myself into situations where I was, easily the most inexperienced, the most unknowledgeable person in the room, and it taught me how to interact with those people.
Sure.
It taught me what I wanted to take from them and also what I didn't want to take from them as professionals. We had several instances of that as well. But then I also think that taught me that there are young people like me in situations, coming up under the ranks, that I could help. So being thrusted into that uncomfy situation taught me that I can help others who are also going to be thrusted into that uncomfy situation behind me. And I think that was a really special part of my internship.
Absolutely. And I just want to come back to this really important statement, is that in every experience, we have the opportunity to learn about how we want to act and how we maybe don't want to act in the future. And that's you sort of hinted at that, and that's so important, right?
Yeah.
To make sure that we're looking for that value in every interaction that we have and every opportunity that comes up.
I have a good example of that. I think Jim Kostler.
I do, yeah.
The former CEO of YBI. But, it wasn't uncommon for him to be out on the sidewalks of downtown Youngstown picking up trash. And, he had a very humble attire. He didn't dress like a CEO.
Yeah.
And very often people would come up to him and be like, hey, there's something out back, can you clean it up, thinking he was the janitor. Or they would refer to him as the maintenance man. And I was raised under the auspice of, you treat the janitor like you treat the CEO, and to see that lived out through him taught me a lot how I interact with different people and the different levels that they're at. And I just love that story about Jim.
Yeah, that's a good story. And he cares about,
he does care
about the community so much. Absolutely. Jane, any other ideas to add to this?
One thing, can you edit this in post? Can you repeat the full question again?
Yeah.
Just
so really what I want us to think about is, what types of skills or traits do you see yourself using in your current experience that you developed in places you didn't expect?
So because I changed majors a number of times, I took a lot of classes that I didn't really expect that I would have had to take, and probably didn't have to take. And a lot of people probably are forced to take them, and they wish that they didn't have to take them and pay for them. But one that I cite often is a SPED class, a special education class that I took for the semester that I was an education major. And in that class, you learn, a lot of people think, like they're not sure what to make of working with kids with special needs. And in that class, what we got an overview of are very common physical, cognitive disabilities that people have. And like if anyone ends up taking this class who's listening to this would, if they've ever taken that class, they might have to wear a leg brace on their leg and try and walk all the stairs in Beagley Hall. They have to put on these funky glasses so that you can't read what's on a page. We talk about the kinds of techniques to get a group of students to listen to you. Like, you should really have 20-minute breaks. People only have about a 20-minute attention span before they need to change activities, even just standing up and down. And while that's an education class, I personally think that everyone could probably use those skills, because I have used those skills in every single job that I've had, because it taught me how to work with people, because everyone's different. Everyone has something different going on in their head. Everyone's got a different level that they're functioning at, certain things that might impede their communication. And when you take those into consideration, I think that you're a much better communicator. Like right now in my job as a contact tracer, I have to speak to people who are, especially towards the beginning of the pandemic, who were very stressed and very confused about what was going on. And they're getting this strange call from a number that they don't recognize we're claiming that we're from the Ohio Department of Health, and they are just all kinds of worried. So without, talking to this person in person over the phone, I'm having to diagnose, like, okay, how is this person feeling? Like, you're using those same techniques of like trying to de-escalate the situation, listening to the person's needs, and then finding a way to speak to them so that they then understand a plan for themselves and how they can get through this time period that we're asking them to take precautions and try to not spread the virus.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wish I would have taken that class.
I'm really glad I did.
Yeah, I mean, I've often said that should just be one of our required general education courses. Like, putting yourself, walking the mile in someone else's shoes, trying to help yourself see the world from a different point of view is, I think, a really important part of what we want students to be able to engage with as they move.
And there's so much flack that I'm sure is still on gen eds that was there when I was there. It's probably always going to be on there, because if as long as it's seen as something that this doesn't pertain to my major, it's an extra expense, it's costly, why do I have to take this course? And that's a valid point. At the same time, though, the skills that you learn in your general education classes, the things that take you out of your comfort zone, so when you do have that career path, those things that force you to think in a different way are probably the most valuable skills you're going to get in terms of your job search.
Absolutely. And we're talking about transferability and developing skills in different areas, but I often remind students that it's an uncommon experience when you hear someone say, "Oh, I got fired from this job because I couldn't do the task I was given." Right? What's more common is I got fired from this job because I couldn't get along with the people around me, or I couldn't get along with my boss, or whatever else it might be. Right? So we're in a culture where information is accessible, but the ability to communicate effectively and engage with other people on a more nuanced basis is such an important part of what we need to be good at to keep everything moving forward. Well, we talked about as well, and when we were talking about the SPED course, people have about a 20-minute time span. We've been going for about 20 minutes right now. So I want to sort of reset. Again, we're doing the Career Conversations podcast with a group of alumni from the College of Liberal Arts, Social Sciences, and Education. I do think that there is a Q&A that popped up for us on the kind of live Q&A that we're doing with Slido. And I want to pull, there's a word on one of the questions related to values. And I think that's really what I'd like to hit on from the Q&A is, what are kind of some values-driven decisions that you've made about working in the field that you're working in, or pursuing a major in the College of Liberal Arts, Social Sciences, and Education. How have values impacted your pathway?
I'll start. So I remember one conversation that I had with Amy Cosentino, who's in the Honors College.
Mm-hmm.
I was explaining to her that I just was kind of beside myself because, I was moving through my first year and I still hadn't picked a major. And I was stressed because people are putting stressors on you. They're saying, well, what are you going to do? When are you going to decide? You need to hurry up. Yeah. And I had said to her, I just want to help people. I don't know how, but I just want to be helpful. I want to have a career, a job where I get to provide value and assistance to others. And probably every position I've worked in so far has very much accomplished that. Like, I don't, you hear stories about, I have a particular friend of mine who was working in banking. Mm-hmm. It was killing him because he was working long hours and he was making a lot of money. And his plan was to continue to do that until he was 28, 30, and then do something else. And you could see visibly the effects that it was taking on his health. Like, the things that he was doing, like, on top of the long hours that he was working, were perhaps not things that he was always comfortable with doing. I don't make a lot of money, and I'm probably not going to soon. Hopefully someday. Dress for the job you want. Yeah. But I can honestly say that in just about every job I've had, I've walked away at the end of the day and I've not felt bad about myself.
I would love to piggytail off of her.
Yeah, please do.
My parents, they don't have college educations. I feel like they still work tirelessly. They're the hardest working people I know. So I feel like hard work and helping people are at the core of who they raised me to be. I think I talked about, like, the crux of my college career, like maybe midway of like a 5-year span. I was flunking out of classes. I knew I wanted to help people. I still didn't know what class or what major I wanted to have, and I knew I needed to graduate. And my dad's like, "Hey, let's go on a mission trip." So that January we went to Guatemala, and we did like mission builder work in Guatemala. It was actually a children's hospice. We went back in March. Yeah. We went back in September. I did 3 mission trips that year, and I remember coming back from that and being like, okay, so I want to help people. I know I can work hard. How can I put all of that into, a meaningful package at YSU? And I thought, it's nonprofit. Like I can do what I love. I can help people. I can, utilize my hard work and the skills that I have, and I can do it in a way that, not one single person is getting rich off of this. It's all for the greater good. So I feel like taking those values that I was raised with, having certain experiences that cultivated that even more, and then putting those into work really helped me get where I'm at. Because I'm in an unconventional place. I work at an accounting firm, and I'm really bad at math. So,
but the values that drove you to kind of stay aligned with these things that were so important to you, kind of kept you on a pathway that it was valuable, and you saw the return on your investment, if you will. Maybe not, when we talk about investment, maybe it's not money or investment all the time right away, but you're feeling that value in terms of the energy that you're getting from the work that happens along the way. Yeah. Jordan, any thoughts?
No, I mean, this is going to stay on theme with what Brittany and Jane have said. And I think it captures the spirit of a liberal arts student well, is, hard work and making a difference. Folks who come out of the liberal arts are they operate in the behind the scenes in society, but they make society work. It's a mostly sometimes a thankless job, but the work is meaningful. That you're making the change, you're impacting people's lives, and like Jane and Brittany, I wanted to make a difference in my community. Early on, I thought I wanted to do community organizing or economic development, but really found my passion in public service through policy making. So with not to belabor the hard work and making a difference, but those were the 2 values that carried me through my experience and motivated me to get across the finish line, get my degree, and start looking and how can I make a small but meaningful change in my community and to the folks around me.
These are good reflections. We're going to pivot almost completely because, as first semester students, exploratory students might be listening to this podcast, we want them in any way possible to get involved on campus, right? It's so important to make, find that home and engage with more than just the classroom here at YSU. And there's a concept called the third place. If you're familiar with this, our first place might be our home. Our second place might be our work or the classroom that we spend a lot of time in. And that third place, is somewhere else that we study or we meet with friends or whatever else it might be that ends up sort of feeling like home, like we're very comfortable in that other place. Do any of you have an experience you can share where you developed a third place on campus, or sometimes a fourth or a fifth or a sixth place if there are multiple locations? Where was your place on campus?
So it took me a while, as a commuter student to find my place, my third place on campus. And the downfall of being a commuter student is, I suppose in some sense, you're tribal. Mm-hmm. I went to Austintown. I hung out with the Austintown kids. I felt safe with them. But as my experience and tenure progressed, I started to break away from that. And my biggest regret, and I say this wholeheartedly, is I wasn't more involved early on during my tenure. I always felt like towards the end I was playing catch up and there wasn't enough time to find my third place, whether that was with a club or an organization. I kind of just, hung out at the library or hung out at Arby's and Kokali and just hung out with the crew from Austintown. So I think it's so important that that you break away from that tribalism and see what's out there. Join a club, join an organization, because it makes such a difference. Again, I wish I would have done that early on in my tenure. I'm in the political space, so I was a member of the college Democrats, and that was towards the end of my experience. And I'm so glad that I was able to have that experience, because I met my first employer, my first boss, through that club, and established a relationship and built a relationship with this guy, and never thought that one day an innocent introduction, innocent conversations would one day lead to how I started my career. So there's a ton of value into broadening your horizons and getting more involved early throughout your tenure.
Mine will be quick, and then I'll hand it over to Jane, because I'm sure she had 3rd, 4th, 5th, maybe even 6th places. But similar to Jordan, I was a commuter student, like I said, and I honestly didn't have a 3rd place on campus. My 3rd place was probably my first internship, which ultimately attracted YSU students in unimaginable ways, just the nature of the organization there. And I feel like that was my 3rd place, but I did not take advantage of the resources and the opportunities that were here on campus. And I sense some regret hearing Jordan talk about it, and I know I'm going to feel even more when Jane talks about it, but yeah, that's just my perspective.
But that internship started to feel like part of that eventually. And now, Jane, you lived on campus.
Don't feel regret. I did live on campus.
Yeah.
I lived in Cafaro House as part of the University Honors and Scholars Program.
Okay.
So I definitely came from a place of privilege in that I was able to live here. So you're able to get more involved at YSU when you live here. I ended up serving in the student government. We did a number of volunteer projects, so it is kind of hard. I would say that my 3rd place probably shifted a lot throughout the time that I was here. During my first couple years, it was probably mostly honors activities, and then as I felt comfortable in the majors that I eventually chose, I ended up heading up the YSU Spanish Club, Los Buenos Vecinos. I hope that they're still active on campus. I thought I saw a Facebook post a while ago, but shouting out to you guys if you're listening. And I started hanging out in the geography department more and more. So I worked in the foreign language lab. So I made friendships with people who weren't even necessarily foreign language students, but we were language tutors. We would go hang out at Inner Circles. Inner Circles still open? Are the one? No!
I know. I'm also particularly
Cheap
sad.
drinks, best pizza. Okay, I don't want to start a Youngstown fight, but I love Inner Circle pizza.
Yeah, so we do miss Inner Circle, but we have Chipotle.
Yeah.
So people like Chipotle now, but
Jimmy John's was the first Jimmy John's in the area. Was
on campus. Yeah,
that was exciting.
So Inner Circle was the 3rd place.
Inner Circle was a 3rd place for me because we'd go have game nights. We'd get done with our shifts with tutoring foreign language students, and then we'd go play games and have drinks. It was great.
Yeah.
They had trivia too, didn't they?
They might have.
Yeah, definitely did trivia, and there's so many great places to talk about with the connection to downtown. But I do, Jane, I want to stay with you a little bit and talk more about that double major. And I wanted to come back to that and just have you share that advice. I know you said that as you were figuring out your kind of pathway at YSU that you realized that you just had time to do it and fit it in. But I don't think students often when they first start at YSU are thinking, yeah, I'm going to double major, right? There's so much pressure to find a passion. And what does the word passion indicate? It's sort of a singular passion, right? And that's hard for people that have a lot going on. I think all the way back to my time in high school, and I played baseball, I bowled, I was on the tennis team, I was on the drama club, was in plays, I sang in the choir, I played in the band, right? I had so many different things, and I think a lot of students come in with that idea of, how do I narrow down my ideas? But again, with that double major, how was that unique for you, and how did you end up saying, yes, this is right to do a double major?
Yeah, so when you come to college, and the university can feel like a place where you're being boxed into a content area. And that can be tough for a person who likes to wear a lot of hats. I was also that person in high school that I like to wear a lot of hats. I like to be involved in a lot of organizations, and I still do. How did I come about it? It's kind of like it was my option to finish on time before my scholarship ran out. Because then it was going to be, I'm still floundering around. I may or may not be able to complete a major, and it's going to take me longer and cost me more money. So it ended up being kind of like there's a lot of luck to it. I'll be honest, there's a lot of luck to it. It's luck. I continued to take geography courses. I just liked the interdisciplinary interdisciplinary nature of geography as a whole. And I've always liked studying languages. So when you actually get out and look for a job, though, I found that it's very difficult combining those passions still, because jobs still want you to do a thing. It's hard to have a desk job where you get to use Spanish. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I was hired to do contact tracing because I had a foreign language background.
Sure.
Like, if you're doing something that's primarily phone calls with people, they want you to be able to communicate to people who may not be able to communicate in English. But while it's something that is hard, while it's hard to combine those passions, I mean, I recently had a conversation with a friend and realized that I've had about 8 jobs since I graduated college. And there's a stigma that comes with that too. Like, did something bad happen? No, I left all 7 of those positions intentionally. I worked a couple jobs in Youngstown. Like I worked at Mill Creek Park as a tour guide. I worked downtown at the auditor's office making maps, like using my geography skills. I had an opportunity to go teach in Spain, so I did that.
Yeah.
I came back. I continued working. I've substitute taught in the area. You just kind of see opportunity that your skills fit, and you go from there. So while geography and Spanish seem like they're an unlikely combination, they've made me marketable in a lot of different positions that I've wanted.
Yeah, marketable and diverse, and really able to be flexible in the workforce, which I think, maybe 3-4 decades ago, it was find the job, hang out, and get a nice pension. And
Gold watch.
Yeah, get that gold watch, and you're good to go. And that's changed so much that we can really be diverse and seek out those opportunities at different points and have different seasons of our career. And I want to say one other thing. You mentioned luck. And I think there's, luck, I firmly believe that luck, we have more luck the more active we are and the more we're talking to people.
Absolutely.
Right? It's this idea of like happenstance. It's like, let's put ourselves in situations that increase our likelihood of having a lucky positive interaction. And it sounds like you did that, right? Which is awesome.
It's luck that comes when you are around people, when you're networking.
Yes.
The term networking gets used so much. When you're just trying to reach out to people, people will reach back out to you.
Yeah.
And you'll find opportunities that you didn't know. My current job, I saw a post on Facebook from a professor at YSU who was just sharing it, and that's how I found it.
Yeah.
Like, you never know how stuff like this is going to happen.
It's that proximity principle. Get around people that are doing the good work.
That's exactly how I feel like most of my career has gone, actually. I work for HD Davis CPAs now, and my friend owned a coffee shop in Canfield many years ago, and Tim, the managing partner at HD Davis, was actually their accountant. And she's like, you've got to meet my accountant. I think you guys would really hit it off. So we had coffee in like an old car garage place that was turned into a coffee shop. And, you know, we were both young. I didn't realize that he was just a few years older than me. And, you know, we kept in contact through my tenure at YBI. And, you know, we worked together at a really awesome opportunity in Youngstown doing promotional products. And now I'm working with him. And, and it's part of that, putting yourself out there in uncomfortable situations, but then also what Jane said, combining your passions. You know, I'm doing graphic design, I'm doing, you know, business development work, and, you know, I'm doing business assistance. So it's like all of those things have come together because I put myself out there.
Brittany, you may have the coolest, like, stories related to networking, because, like, between Craigslist for your first internship and then, like, a old car garage. I love it. Those are great examples.
And I'm actually pretty shy. So, like, yeah.
Well, we've got just enough time, because there's one really important question, and I want to give each of you enough time to spend with this question, so I want to move to it. And it's sort of a two-part question. Again, many students listening to this might be exploring where they fit into YSU. And the two-part question is, first and foremost, when you were a student, what's some of the best advice that you received from a mentor, an advisor, a faculty member, whoever it might be, to help motivate you along your way? So what's some of that best advice? And then what advice would you give to a student who's exploring their pathway at YSU and might be interested in one of the majors that you chose?
I'll tackle the advice question first, because I feel like I was actually just asked this on a leadership retreat, so it's fresh. My best advice that I was ever given from a mentor, that was within my internship, is also simultaneously in some ways the worst advice that I've ever gotten.
Okay.
And it sounds crazy, but, you know, it was fake it till you make it. So it's great in the idea of, you know, you have some confidence in that moment. If you don't know the answer to the question, you maybe jot it down and find the answer later. You present yourself with confidence, and, you know, all of the things that are positive that could come from faking it until you make it. Because in some ways that did help me get to, you know, the level and the career that I have now. But it's also the worst advice in the way that, you know, you're setting yourself up to maybe have inflated confidence, or the reverse of that, where you have no confidence at all and you just feel like you're out there swimming around and you don't actually feel like you're doing anything meaningful. So the other part of that is my advice for, like, first year students is, it's okay if you don't know what you want to do. I've had 3 pretty decent career shifts. They've all had a common thread. Jane's had many. It's okay to not know what you want to do. You know, I'll talk to 70-year-olds today and they'll be like, I still don't know what I want to do, and they're retired. So you'll be like that your whole life. But I think if you stay true to who you are, those values we talked about earlier, and you just keep trying to, you know, do the best you can, make the impact you want to make, you know, something is going to come of it. So work hard and do all the right things. But
yeah, those are good thoughts. Jane, Jordan? Anything?
Yeah, so, no, like I said, nothing immediately jumps out at me as advice from a professor or a mentor through my experience, partly because it was so long ago. But, you know, don't let good enough just be good enough. You know, of course, show up to class, do the work, but just don't let it end there. There are other opportunities and experiences to immerse yourself in, to take full advantage of, because you just don't know where one day that will lead you to. When I was searching for my first job, it was right after the Great Recession, and the labor market was super tight. You know, all these people went back to college to get re-educated, and now they're all out in the labor market looking for jobs. And, you know, I stay true. Don't let good enough be good enough. There were career and job opportunities that I could have, you know, taken advantage of in finance or in selling insurance, but I didn't want to do that. That's not what I wanted to do. It would have been good enough to use my degree to be a college student and enter the workforce and start, you know, building towards a retirement, but it wasn't good enough for me. I held out, and I'm glad I did, because an opportunity from my time as a student presented itself, and it was the right fit for me, and I never looked back.
Yeah, that's good advice. I mean, you know, not letting good enough be the piece that kind of jumps people into that first job is important, because it's so it's easy to say, oh, there's a paycheck and there's something that I can go jump in and do. But especially right now, I think students owe it to themselves to spend some time and make sure those values highly align, and that we're capitalizing on our strengths just as much as we are finding a paycheck that we're excited about. I know for me, the main thing that led me into working in higher education was a job on campus when I was in my undergrad. I worked as an orientation leader, helping students when they came to campus for the first time in the summer, and that's the main thing that helped me find higher ed as a pathway, those kind of part-time jobs along the way.
Justin, I wanted that job so bad, but never got it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, there's still opportunities, and I can get you connected with the right people.
Jane's probably got their number.
Jane, so advice that you received, and then any advice you'd have for an exploratory student in their first year.
Jordan, I really liked your advice, but my advice, probably because of the position that I'm in right now, is going to be kind of the other side of that coin. Because I can't think of any magic words that professors told me right now. I'm sure it'll come to me as soon as we're done here. But I always had professors, advisors telling me that I was trying to think of the perfect career, and I just needed to not worry about that so much and just do any opportunity. And that's pretty much what I've done, is I've gone from opportunity to opportunity because I've just said, well, this looks fun at this time. I would still like to find that magic career path, and it might exist for me, it might not. I would say don't stress too much if you can't easily identify that thing. The job that I'm working right now is not going to exist someday. Like, I fell into the position of a contact tracer because
we hope it's not going to exist someday.
We hope at some point, I imagine the funding will probably dry up. True. So while there still will probably be people getting sick, we're probably not going to call you at some point. Yeah. So I had been working out of the country, and I came back at the beginning of the pandemic because I was afraid that my job over there was going to disappear, and it did. So I fell into this position, and I don't know where it's going to lead me next. Yeah. There's opportunities for advancement, but I'm not sure what's next for me. So I'm not going to let that worry me too much, but I just got to keep moving forward.
If I could add one more thing and just piggyback off of her, this all seems, later in your time at YSU, and I think if I could jump back to those beginner classes when you're just starting out, it's take the internship. If you want an internship at Angels for Animals, take it. If you want to do it at a trucking company, take it. Just try it, because I feel like in my time, I worked with a lot of students, a lot of fellows, a lot of internships over the years, and I feel like this may not be where they want to end up, but then they get there and they're happy and they're comfortable and they want to stay if they offer them a job. And it's you don't have to stay at the first person that offers you a job, but go out there, get those opportunities, find what you like, find what you don't like. That's the purpose of an internship. You're finding out about yourself, you're finding what you should be doing, you're hopefully learning and having a meaningful experience too, but I feel like that's really important, is to just take the internships, even if they're unpaid and on Craigslist.
Well,
just kidding. Be careful.
Well, we talked in one of our career exploration classes about passion development, right? Because we talked earlier about what do you do if you have a lot of passions. It could be hard to narrow that down. But what if you feel like you don't really have that thing that you're passionate about? I think especially for that type of young person who might not really be able to articulate where do I see myself in the future, especially for that type of student. That's where it's so important. Just start. Try some places. Work part-time in parking. Work part-time over here. Wait some tables. Do some bartending. Just get out and start that network. I think that's definitely a key for that type of individual.
If you don't try it, you're never going to know if you don't like it. So I've learned a lot about myself since I graduated and what I like and don't like. Whereas I walked in to YSU really not knowing a lot about my likes and dislikes, or maybe being afraid to understand those for myself. And because I've done a bunch of different things, I kind of know a little bit more about what kinds of things I want to look for in the future. So just start somewhere.
Well, time certainly flies when we're having good conversations, and I want to thank each of you for being here today. We're right at the hour mark pretty much, so you've been listening to the Career Conversations podcast. I've been joined by a panel of alumni from the College of Liberal Arts, Social Sciences, and Education. I also want to thank the Bouncing Back Grant for helping to fund this podcast series, as well as the Office of Alumni and Engagement. For the Office of Career Exploration and Development, I'm Justin Edwards. Thank you all for listening.